Morning, friends. It's Hank. That little piece there is Handel from the Messiah, which was played, I believe, in, I think, 17... Look at my note here. Would have been 1769 that would have been played in New York in the Trinity Church. It was the first time it was ever played in the Colonies. I guess there was 16, let me see, the overture and 16 numbers there at Trinity Church in New York back in the days. And today's ambient glow radio is actually, I have a place where I plan to go, but there's a lot of different places that we can go with it. And the title of the episode, and so rarely do I title a piece before I begin, because I really like to see the body of the work before I title the piece, so I can really understand the essence of the thing before, well, it's got to bring on a life of its own. Like right now, I don't quite have everything in place as far as what my thoughts will be. But I named it Raleigh Tavern because Raleigh Tavern was the place where Patrick Henry, so that's, Patrick Hank Henry. So it's kind of a pseudonym that I'm adopting here and there. So you might see somebody like writing under a peahat or a peahen, or possibly a Christian Rosenkreutz, but that's maybe another story for another day. And firstly, I think it would be important just to get a few pieces of business out of the way while I enjoy the libations here of the tavern, of the Ambient Glow Radio. Welcome to my home. Again, this is Hank McGurk, your pajama scholar. And I had anticipated running this a little bit earlier. I mean, in the night rather than first thing at daybreak, since I'm on a night schedule, but programming and other things have taken me in another direction. So I've really not had yet the opportunity to get deep into the cups like I enjoy. But I think the real point that maybe I should get to first is it is abundantly clear that we will be at some point entering a hyperinflationary environment. See, everybody knows at this point that the stock market is a fraud, and it's denied my generation an opportunity to participate, invest. There's a ton of malinvestment. The economy is basically a zombie. I can literally work all the time. My work is in high demand, and yet I have to give it away for free because there's no money velocity. In an ordinary capitalistic functioning economy where you didn't have to work for a corporation or a conglomerate or for the government, you would be paid enough for your work so you could purchase other things from other people and you would have a healthy economy. But unfortunately, this country, America, if it can still be called that, I certainly hope so. And we're going to touch on that a little bit today too. But when corporatism takes over and denies economic opportunity to anybody else, and then there's the usury and the willingness of generations that preceded mine to kick the can down the road, if you will, and there's no more kicking really that can be done. You have an entire generation that's in debt. I'm one of the few that don't take debt because I don't believe in debt. But what I think they're going to do, with a yield curve, basically you have in an economy a couple of different factors, or as far as the let's call it the financial machinery, because this was something that I studied a long time ago. It was the first thing that I really had to try and study to understand, all right, how does the world work and what in the hell is going on, and then what's going to happen next. And some people would be satisfied to understand how the markets work and just stop there and make buku bucks. My track record has been very, very good down to the day where I can call major market movements. But since it's part of my philosophy, part of, let's call it a school that I was not aware that I had begun to discover long ago, requires certain vows or certain principles, and one of them is a vow of poverty, or basically you don't accumulate for the sake of accumulation, and you live by charity, and whatever that you accumulate you are happy to give. And this philosophy, this vow, enables you to have clarity of thought because you're not prepossessed with materialism. So I only survive by the charity of others and my willingness to give, which enables me to have a special clarity of thought. I'm more than happy to give the information away as I understand it for other people to be able to profit. I believe in capitalism. I also believe in reciprocal altruism. Reciprocal altruism is a principle of the highest accord, part of the school. I'm going to call it the school for now until I care to define it a bit more. Where if you're able to present something that enables someone to profit, then perhaps they would be reciprocal in their altruism. They will share. And I find, and I have found, that this weeds out and sends the devils in flight from you, because you can quickly determine who is a person worthy of character if they don't require payment, or if you give them something they feel as if that debt needs to be repaid. Never contractual, but a matter of principle, a matter of honor. So the vow of poverty is an important one, but I want to talk a little bit more about the economy and the way that it's going, and the way that they're going to probably bring in another round of QE to pump up the stock market in order to keep the phony baloney system going, because the rest of the world has essentially de-dollarized. Number one, the Federal Reserve was never designed to be a global institution. As far as it was able to function, it functioned magnificently well. Initially, they brought it in because they had boom-bust cycles of about 8 years, and that was causing too many disruptions for too many people, and they wanted an economic system that was a little bit more stable. And it was backed by gold, redeemable by gold. They didn't stop that until the 70s, when I think somebody came in and put a gun to Nixon's head, because he wanted to keep it on the gold standard. But there was no way they could finance these endless wars without fiat, paper, fake money, currency. It's the only way that you can have perpetual war, because essentially what are you doing? You're taking resources, building them, and then blowing them up and getting nothing in return. So it's clearly not about resources. It's not about oil. War is not. Sometimes it's about resources, but given the fact that we have suppressed technologies and all sorts of other things, and America has its own supply of oil and other renewable energies and other types of energy sources, And if you look at it from an economic standpoint, it would have been a lot cheaper to construct pipelines and water lines and schools and, done business fairly than it would have been to spend trillions of dollars on basically tribal displacement. I think, honestly, if we were to take a look at it, the wars that were fought on paper currency, fiat currency, were not even wars of ideology, because even our own ideologies here in the United States have been subverted, because you can look at so many different aspects of what is supposed to be the supreme law of the land, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and most specifically, I'm talking about just the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, which is one piece I will cover today in the spirit of, Raleigh Tavern. Now, I do believe that the wars were more about tribal displacements. I believe it's about destroying extended families, destroying family units, so that there can be no challenge to the ruling family or families of the world. Because in numbers there's power, and there's no greater power than in the familial ties of blood or ideological association. I often say it's been said, family, nation, future, something of that nature. Anyway, I digress. That's the point. Now, what I wanted to cover really is the hyperinflationary aspect that we're going to move into. Because basically the stock market is operating completely politically. So essentially it's a managed economy. And when you have a managed economy, that's communism. Or damn near a form close to it, fascism, where everything is run by a select group of corporations that have specific interests. And more specifically, fascism or corporatism is the marriage of state and corporate power, giving certain advantages to a certain select group, which we clearly have seen. Now, what's going to happen is something that's probably going to be very close to what happened in the Weimar Republic, or, the end of Rome, or, let's see, in Holland. Fiat currencies typically have a lifespan of about 30 or 35 years. And since the United States can no longer enforce the petrodollar, basically, it's kind of like a mafia thing. It's like, you're going to take this dollar, even though it's losing its value, and you're going to use it as a reserve, because if you don't, you're going to get the Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi treatment. You're going to get democracy JDAMs up your ass is what you're going to get. Same reason they threaten North Korea, same reason they threaten Iran, same reason they're pissed off kind of at Turkey right now, which is insane. The same reason they want to take a shot at Venezuela, although Venezuela is definitely a special case. Because these countries are countries that don't want to accept a central bank. And long ago, have other countries worked out a different sort of trade agreement, reciprocal trade agreements based on gold. And I'm going to kind of let you guys know how the hyperinflationary environment, how you actually, everybody's like, oh, you got to stack your silver, you got to have gold. Well, I know people in my generation, we don't have any kind of fucking extra money. I mean, we're barely making it by. God forbid, you actually have student debt and, car payments and all these other things like that, I got to put up with this nonsense where my rent goes up, and I go, what in the fuck? I'm looking at all these houses sitting open, and yet the price of real estate keeps going up. And I go, why did my rent go up? And they say, oh, that's market price. The fuck do you mean market price? You just making this shit up as it go along? Yeah, well, they are. And either you like it or you can, they're going to fucking throw you out, and they're going to do that under force of arms. They're going to stick a gun in your face and tell you to get the fuck out. It's like tossing elderly people out on the street, back in 2007. It's like people lose all their pensions due to fraud. They can't make their mortgage note or whatever. And, basically they send people to their friggin' houses and they stick a gun in their face if they don't want to leave. And they say, you don't own it, get the fuck out or we're going to kill you. So that's, it's kind of looking more like a plantation to me than a republic. So there definitely needs to be some major changes. And since the world is looking at this, the entire world, I don't think there's a nation or a people in the world, the United States government. When I'm talking about the United States government, I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the fucking bureaucrats in Washington. I really can't name very many people they haven't pissed off. And when you get the whole world pissed off, the whole world is plotting against you. And their first step is to de-dollarize you, because America, given its geography, makes it a very difficult nation to attack militarily. You can do it. It can be done. And in the United States, an internal revolution is possible, but it's something that I have hoped to avoid, because I know that an internal revolution in the United States based on ideology or money or any of that other type of stuff is going to be so friggin' bloody and nasty and awful. It's something I don't even really want to fathom, despite the fact that I'm in such strong opposition to the nonsense that's going on in Washington. I mean, they passed these laws, these anti-free speech laws. They can't do antitrust. They haven't done any antitrust stuff. They're clearly not representing the will of the people. And when you abrogate the Constitution, you could basically call that illegitimate and acting illegally in many ways. But everybody that they bring in from the Justice Department and the special investigators and so forth seem to be unable to make a prosecutable case and resolve things in a timely fashion, as there are things that we really need to get on and go ahead and do. And until that fraud and that corruption is purged, yes, the world is not going to invest in the United States. They're just not going to do it. Because you can't be guaranteed that your investment is going to be safe. Just like I withdrew, because why am I going to risk injury working at the Bronze Forge for $13 an hour? Knowing that I don't have any health care, knowing that, the risk is too great. It's cost-benefit analysis. Sure, I could go work for the insurance companies. I'm licensed to do all that type of stuff. But I looked at it and I said, no, I don't want to participate in that way. I could sit here and friggin' make buku bucks trading all day long, staring at the screens, but I don't consider that to be particularly productive. And again, it doesn't match with my philosophy of a vow of essentially poverty, because having understood these principles for so long, it allowed me to kind of move on to the next thing, so I could learn more. I mean, I consider materialism, or the want to accumulate more and more and more, sort of a spiritual blindness, because there's only but so much that money can buy. What do you have? Another McMansion. And if you have money, you don't necessarily have security. You could have a garage full of gold bars, and you don't necessarily have security. You could have all the rice and all the preps and all the guns and everything in the world. But say, the wild weather comes through and a tornado comes and blows your house down, or a hurricane is coming in, an earthquake, a sinkhole. All you really have is, well, as Scarface said, and I'm talking about the Scarface from Texas with Bushwick Bill and the rest of the crowd, the Ghetto Boys. He said, all you got really is your balls and your word. And that's true, and your skills, your skill sets. So what they're going to do probably is bring in another round of QE to kick the can down the road even further, because I don't think any administration wants to preside over the economic reality that should have been dealt with a long time ago in 2007. I mean, we can rebuild this economy from scratch because we have a very skilled population. People in my generation are extremely skilled. We're carrying the load in triplicate and getting pissed on by fucking people all the time saying, oh, you shouldn't have your Starbucks latte. You shouldn't go out to eat whatever because you could buy, an ounce of silver. Or make sure you pay down your debts. And it's like, are you so fucking stupid that you don't realize that, the dollar is now maybe worth 3% of what it was initially? And if they do another round of QE, what the fuck are you saving for? What the fuck are you? It's insanity to me. The ideology of these so-called market men, I call them marketeers, like fucking mouseketeers, because they're daft. They totally friggin' daft. And they'll say, well, you didn't have to go to school to get a degree and go into debt. You could have gone into a trade, or you could have, you could have done like I did in the 70s. Well, in the 70s, $15 an hour bought you a fuck ton more than it did today. It's like wages have been stagnant and inflation is through the roof and job opportunities are nothing. And you have no opportunity for advancement, even if you are a highly specialized individual, because there's no factories. There's monopolies on tech and all that stuff. Wow, I pontificated here for 20 minutes just going on about what's caused this, what's led to this, and how, they'll blame it on, I've heard these guys blame it on video games, and the fact that kids want to sit around and smoke dope, and they want to do this and that, like the millennials are just the dumbest fucking people that ever lived, when the system has specifically been engineered to cannibalize them in order to fund these fascist operations, and they've been given no political recourse. It's like, who do you vote for, Pepsi or Coke? The only reason that I think there was Hillary Clinton getting slammed and Trump not getting so slammed. Let's say, this is maybe a little bit too clever. Maybe this is a little bit too bold for me to say, and it's merely a speculation. But in Trump, who do you have? You have a guy that people have known for a long time, because he's very egocentric. He's been about branding. He's been on his own reality television show. He does a whole lot of tweeting. So if there ever was a great president to put into office, not because he's politically savvy, not because he's geopolitically aware, but to bring about the deprogramming of a great deal of the American population, who has been indoctrinated almost to the point of such a level of fascism, it's almost like the Soviet Union or North Korea, in my opinion. It's like, hail Trump, he's got everything figured out, and it's as he fucking blows up, he bombs this city in Syria on a rumor. He's like, bomb it, trying to wage war, selling all kinds of weapons of war to the Japanese and to other people around the world. Basically a big fucking arms dealer, just like with the Saudis, selling all the weapons. But because the American people have experience with him, they can see him as the man that he is. So they can deprogram from this dear leader, friggin' Führer, hair fucking, El Presidente sort of figure, which the American people have sorely needed, because it's frankly been amazing to me the level of warmongering that the previous generation has done. It's like, to me, the solution would have been very simple if everybody had done just as I had done and said no and went on strike. It only had to last a week. Everybody in the country could have just said, no, fuck it, I'm not going to work. Or either that, or they could have just parked their cars in the middle of the freeway and gotten out of them and just walked away. So the whole country shutting down because we're not doing this shit. Very peaceful type of stuff could have been done. But say, oh, well, if I don't do it, somebody else will do it. I got to make my money. So you lack principle. But far be it from me to accuse, because everybody has their own need to follow the dictates of their life in their own way. So I've only been lucky enough, I suppose, to have been able to live a life, to be able to learn and discover, to dedicate my life to study, and only by the grace of God survive, and by the grace of God and through the blood of Jesus Christ, to have been saved and to learn to become more than what I was. So far be it from me to condemn somebody that's just doing what they need to do to survive. That's mighty high-handed of me. So I like to look at things in terms of things that are simple, peaceful, and godly in these days. But those days weren't always so. And what I say could be easy could really bring about much hardship for many people, many families, because you're kind of looking at a situation where, yeah, they're going to come and stick a gun in your face and kick you out of your property, and the only way is to stick a gun in their face and say, no, pull the trigger, motherfucker, push the button, push the button, push the button. And I think that human nature, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. So you try and extricate yourself and just do the best you can. Most people don't have that same type of willingness to risk as much as I have, and I do. So now the hyperinflationary environment kicks in. You don't have any silver, you don't have any gold. What do you do? Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a piece and I'm going to refresh my cup, because that's what I like to do, to see where this whole thing is going to take me. So let me bring up something for you guys. Simply delightful. Simply delightful. All right. Well, let me get to the business, because it's very important that everybody should know these things that are in my generation. Okay, because you don't have silver, you don't have gold. All right, I know these things because you've been fucking screwed. All right. So I'm going to give you some alternatives to being totally fucking screwed. So you don't freak out, because you know it's coming. And if you look back in history, the Germans said probably the worst thing that they experienced, even worse than World War I and World War II, was the collapse of the economy in the Weimar Republic, because that was something that everybody felt. So I'm going to give you guys the options outside of having to deal with bullshit hyperinflationary legal tender, or having a lack of precious metals, because not everybody's going to have them. And, well, fuck that shit. I mean, I do believe in a physical hand-to-hand economy, but there's not enough of it to go around, and there's certainly not going to be enough of it to resolve trade disputes. And you're going to want to hang on to that shit if you have it anyway. And personally, I think shiny metal should be fucking made into statues and art, and not bars and coins, but there it is. First thing I think that we should probably cover is well, let's go ahead and do a note. Or actually, the place where we should really start would be probably let's do contract real quick. Because it's a way that, as long as you fulfill certain requirements, and there's basically only 4, you're going to be able to create a legally binding document, which you can offer consideration outside of money. It could be labor, it could be time, so on and so forth. So, contract is a mutual agreement. You should know that. All right, requirements. Contract needs to have 2 or more competent parties. Okay? Competent means not insane, not drunk, of legal age. All right? A legal subject matter. All right, well, that's neither here nor there. Consideration. Consideration basically means that consideration would be you agree to do or not do something. So you would say, all right, well, I'll paint your house if you give me the materials to do it, and I get to keep the ladder, and I get to keep everything afterwards. If you furnish the materials, I keep everything afterwards, and I get X amount of dollars, and in lieu of dollars, you could have some other sort of consideration. Assent of the parties. And I don't really think I'm going to go too far into contracts, because it's really simple. It's only basically 4 pieces to a contract that have to be fulfilled. And I'm generally pretty diligent about making it very, very easy to understand. The most that you would have to look at for a contract would be 6 elements. First, you need an offer. Okay. Second, you need acceptance. Third, you need consideration. Fourth, you need mutuality of obligation. That means that of the 2 parties or more, each person involved, or each party in the contract, has to have some skin in the game, for lack of a better term. if I were to say, um, trying to think of a really good example of a null contract where there would be a lack of consideration. And consideration can even be a promise to do or not do something. I mean, I guess that's the most important takeaway here. It's a promise to, you can have a contract that's based on a promise to do or not do something that two or more parties agree to. It could involve physical property or not. And you can just use that. Now, a contract is more complicated than a note, and I'm going to use notes. And notes is really what I want to get to instead of contracts. But contracts is one way to go. You can witness a contract. You can have a handshake contract. There are only certain types of contracts that absolutely have to be written down. Those are kind of like marriage contracts, real estate, real property type contracts. And the fifth is competency and capacity. So, like I say, of age, not mentally ill, acting of your own accord, sober when you agree to the contract. So, basically, an offer to do or not do something, an acceptance of that offer, some consideration, whether it be financial or labor or otherwise, and then the mutuality of obligation, which means each person on or each party on each side of the contract, if you think of it as a T, there's the line, here's party one, party two. Party one's got to have something to offer, and party two has got to have something to offer. So there's some meeting in the middle to fulfill the terms of the contract. And then competency and capacity. And I'm not really going to go into the super legalese of all of it unless you need me to or you want me to. If there's ever any question, fuck it, hit me up, leave me a comment, and I'll lay it out for you. Because in a hyperinflationary environment, you're not going to be able to rely on your non-existent bank account. And it's better to use these legal remedies is a lot better than shooting each other. Okay. But then it would require a decent judge. But then if you want to, in a civilian court, you can basically have your own arbitrator. There's nothing that the bar association is a British fucking thing. It's an admiralty law sort of thing. They operate under a pretense of authority that really does not exist. It exists because they stick a gun in your face and put you in jail because they say it fucking exists and they have the force to back it up. But you don't have to do that shit. You really don't. You can choose your own arbitrator. You can choose your own methods of enforcing a contract. These are just frameworks for you to use to be a civilized person. Otherwise, you could denigrate into type of person that just steals what they need. Believe me, I understand. They've made a travesty of the law. So, I can understand everybody's frustration. All right. Now, if you have a municipality, this would be what I would suggest. Like, all right, say an hyperinflationary environment kicks in. Everything's kind of going tits up. Money's not worth anything anymore. You can't buy, it's better to, if you had pallets of $100 bills, it would be cheaper to wallpaper your house with the $100 bills than it would be to get wallpaper. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about, a hyperinflationary environment. So what can you do if you're a municipality or you have some legitimate or claim to legitimacy in some sort of locally administrative, what I would call a proximity or approximation, a principality or a county or you could even go so far as to incorporate a small bit of properties in a confederation, and then use something, issue your own bonds, and then use those bonds to finance your operations. Now, say you have a great city or a great town, good people, you got trash systems running, you got clean drinking water, you got a library, and yet the hyperinflationary environment has created it so that your people, your trash collector, your librarian, your museum curator, your police officer, your fire department, your doctors, they can't get what they need. But I'm not necessarily doctors. We're kind of taking them out. I'm specifically talking about more like people that a local government, a local administration would need in order to continue to function, to serve the public. You could issue those municipal bonds. So it would basically be like, all right, well, because there's a hyperinflationary environment and there's no fucking, the money's not worth shit, what we're going to do is issue you a bond that's going to say, well, if you are going to pick up trash 6 days a week, then that's going to, in turn, offer you some equity in one of these empty properties that we have sitting open, or perhaps a certain amount of land, or perhaps some other part of the incorporation, the territory, confederation, county, city, whatever. We're going to offer you some piece of it, and it will continue to grow through the issuance of a bond. And then that way you cut out the hyperinflationary nonsense. And then through those labors, the larger superstructure of your administrators can procure things for the general population that are required, like, food and whatnot, which would require inter-community relationships and perhaps even international investments. That's getting a little bit more advanced. But the bond, the municipal bond, the local municipal bond is probably the best way to go to keep your local administrations functioning. And if you find that your local administration is at present not representing you, it's very easy to cut them out because they're not going to be able to afford to pay for their own enforcement. Okay, so if they don't have force and they don't feed their people, they're typically not considered to be effective administrators or legitimate. So basically all you need, there's only from a logistical perspective, there's only really two things that you need to take control, to win a war, to win anything, to control a territory, and as much of it as you want. There's only two things that you really need. One is food to feed that population. Otherwise, you're not legitimate to the extent of how many people you can feed. And two, you need the force of arms to secure your people and your policies. So if one administration is defunded and has no legitimate claim to offer the municipal bond, you merely offer your own municipal bonds, declare your own principality, declare your own territory and corporation and so forth, and whatever articles of confederation that you want to, and mutually aligned sort of territories. And you've got all the force of arms in the world, as long as you can feed your fighters. Fairly simple. And people will flock to you if you feed them. And then there is no rule against the issuance of your own currency. There's not. As long as it doesn't represent, look like, match the Federal Reserve note, you can do whatever you want. That's why that when you're in an arcade, the arcade can issue tickets. When you're, you might say, all right, well, or tokens, okay? You go into the arcade, you put $5 in the machine, you get tokens out. And your tokens you turn into tickets, and the tickets you redeem for prizes. Okay, inside the arcade, those tickets and those tokens are very, very legitimate forms of currency. All right? They're not made of silver, not made of gold, but they're definitely worth a lot in the arcade. All right? Or you go into a casino, okay? And you buy your chips. All right? Now, when you're in the casino, the chip is everything. When you leave, you cash out and you take something else with you. But inside that casino, the chip is a very legitimate form of currency. Everything else in the world operates like that. There is absolutely no rule against establishing your own types of currency in this way. It doesn't have to be silver. It doesn't have to be gold. But what you do need to make that type of system work is you need to have somebody that is going to promote that currency, and they're going to talk to people and say, all right, we're going to use this as a representation of an hour's worth of labor. And we're going to be able to exchange this token, whatever you decide it to be, for an hour's worth of labor in something else. And then you have to basically have enough of those people to go around and make sure that it's accepted inside of the community. And then you need to have your ambassador and your diplomat to go to other territories that are part of your confederation that are willing to exchange the goods that you can produce. So you've got your inter-community medium of exchange or currency, and then you've got your but you run into a complication only if you're crossing state lines. Now, if you're crossing state lines, that's going to be a little bit different. But my suggestion to you in that type of situation would be to take a look at what the Kennedy family did in, let's say, during the Prohibition era, or Arnold Rothstein, or Meyer Lansky, or fucking Lucky Luciano. Okay, all right. So those guys kind of will teach you how to do interstate commerce in that way, or the Appalachian moonshiners. If you need to handle interstate commerce in that way, because what type of superstructure would you have to contend with in a hyperinflationary environment when they don't have the force to pay them? Now, it's been rumored, I don't know if it's true or not, that the FBI is not even necessarily an American institution, even though it was founded by Hoover. It's probably controlled by I suspect it's controlled by a European entity at this point. That's just speculation on my part. Given the fact that I think that the Europeans, number one, have used America, especially England and Germany, have used America like a fucking colony, bitch state. And our forefathers recognized that we weren't bitches, and fuck the Europeans. So just like in the vein of Patrick Henry, I'm going to go ahead and return to those roots and say, fuck the fucking Europeans. They need to come to me. The only Europeans, but, you know, hey, I could really use some of that German innovation. I really could. I don't really have much use for the UK right now because they're not doing me any fucking favors. And everything passes through a London bank. So they can kiss my ass. They're going to need a lot of help. Or the fucking United Kingdom would be one of those countries that I would think that might not last 200 years. I think there's a handful of countries that I would put bets on that are not going to be around in the next 200 years. One I would say would be Israel. Two I would say that would be the UK. Three I would say Saudi Arabia is fucking toast. So I mean Israel as having a religious identity, sure, but having a national fucking territorial border, I don't know about that. Just don't know about that. So, the French. Let's briefly touch on the French while we're talking about Europe. I have a sneaking suspicion. Okay, and this is mere speculation based on observations that I've made. I believe that the French nationals, the French patriots, are arming through Serbia and through Montenegro and then into southern Spain and then into France. And these are not governmental forces. And from what I can gather, the French generals already tried to whack Macron one time, and their little shit got busted up, and then their Macron's bodyguard flipped, and there were a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and most of the police forces have flipped except for the fucking Nazis that they can bring in from Brussels. I am all about a European Union as far as being a trading bloc because it's necessary to prevent war, but you can't have everything dictated by a bunch of fascist bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats running shit out of Brussels. Fuck that. For Macron to say that the French have no national identity, they can suck my dick. Of course, but the real funny part, I love the French, I really do. And then their fucking sense of humor to send us the Statue of Liberty, which is a castrated god. It's a man dressed as a woman that cut his own dick off, and they've got the Eiffel Tower. They're some funny fuckers. That's really, in my opinion, how war should be waged, with that level of cleverness. So the French patriots are very receptive to the idea of throwing off fascism, and whether fascists like it or not, it's just not going to work, because once you end up with global monopolies, trade freezes because the global monopolies are not going to be able to agree on anything at any point, and that international trade is just going to stop. And then you don't have money velocity moving through the populations. So globalization is a failed fucking stupid idea where they wanted to try and make everybody a neo-feudal serf, and look at that shit just go on throughout history. You end up with noblemen and politicians with their head on fucking pikes and under the guillotine over and over and over and over again. It's like when you lose the mandate of heaven, your head gets cut the fuck off. There's enough people around to snatch your ass up and take it off. They'll find you. It's like, I keep saying, it's like revolution in this country wouldn't be man versus man. It would look like Italy in 1933 when they drug Benito Mussolini and his whole friggin' fascist cadre out into the street and ripped them apart. And the Italians said, look at them now, look at them now. You know, it would be easier to just send these fucking people off to Nuremberg to answer for war crimes. But, you know, they're going to stick to their guns till the bitter end, I suppose. They're fucking nuts. But, hey, you know, they're not there because they're smart. They're there because they're power hungry, greedy, and blind. I mean, that's just how people that are food for the moon, that want the 48 or the 72 laws, that's just the way they want to go. They don't want to go towards liberty and freedom. They want to go towards dominion and domination. All right, so I've covered the bond. And I've covered all I really care to on the contract, but I can cover more. All right, and then notes. Notes is probably going to be the thing that we really should take a look at. And I'm going to just read one quick passage of one very basic definition. A note is a simple written promise to pay a certain sum at a certain time to a person named therein. An individual promissory note is a note in which one party promises to pay another a certain sum of money at a specified time. A joint promissory note is the same as an individual note, except that it is signed by two or more parties, all of whom are liable jointly but not severally. In a joint and several promissory note, two or more parties severally and separately agree to pay a certain sum at a specified time, and each signer is responsible for the whole amount. Statutes in many states, blah, blah, blah. And basically, all right, say you enter a hyperinflationary environment, and you're a farmer, okay, and you need fertilizer, you need fuel, or you need something to produce your food. You just need a little grease to get things going. Okay. Farmers used to do promissory notes all the time. Okay. You can, in a hyperinflationary environment, you can do promissory notes. So if your loaf of bread costs $10,000, you can say, all right, well, I'm just gonna, I don't have $10,000, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write you a promissory note, and I'll agree to exchange either my local currency, which that you will be starting to establish, or your labor, or some or other sort of consideration in the form of monies, to make that note or the promissory notes a little bit easier to exchange in lieu of these insane, the insane hyperinflation that you would have to deal with. It's all based on what your local communities can procure. And if you're a wise administrator, you would already think ahead to these types of things, which I can give you some guidance on depending on where you live. I mean, I've had the, for as much as these dickheads that are late to the party are always saying, oh, well, all they do is sit around and play video games and smoke dope. It's like, motherfucker, guess what? I was about, I don't know, when did I figure this shit out? 20 years ago? And then I started working on it in 2014. So, believe me, I've had plenty of time to figure all this shit out, what I got, what people need, what they need to get, how to get it, how to talk to other people, who to talk to, how to ship it, how to move it, and I don't need a fucking dime to do it. Layers upon layers of figuring that shit out. So, oh yeah, all these guys do is sit around, go back to play your video games. Hey, dipshit, that's what I get. If I want to take a couple hours out to program and make a video game or fucking play one, that's the benefit of being able to have a thinking fucking brain that works about 20 years faster than your late to the ass party does. And while you think you've got everything, It's this Jeremiah babe. Let me show you this motherfucker. You know how I like to do. I'm like, this motherfucker, right? Now the Tavern part of now the Raleigh Tavern's starting to kick in a little bit, right? I gotta find something for you guys to take a look at while I refresh my cup. Okay. Oh, my favorite friend. Let me see if I can get him a note to let him know that I'm live. Maybe he'll join me. And my favorite friend, this man, H. Thomas Ackerman, changed who I am. An incredible artist. A brilliant man. I had never been inspired before. I'd always wanted to be a step ahead. I'd always wanted to, what do I need to get the edge? What do I need to be ahead? What do I need to, me. What do I need to have that little step, This man taught me about being greater than yourself. To put a spirit, to give a man a spirit that's otherwise in a bag of blood. And his friendship, and this goes back years. He was the first guy that, there was a couple of guys that discovered me like way back in the day. T. Gus, which I think is Shun, and he's still operating out there a little bit. But H. Thomas Ackerman helped me cultivate something more. So I became more than I was, and started to help me cultivate my thoughts, to grow as a person, not just to be an observer, but to actually start to think and to, I had spent time in the fires of the Bronze Forge. So observing art and loving art, but not knowing the depths of the exploration of what it takes to understand the nature of reality and then where we fit in it, and to be dedicated to a greater mission. And then for him, so many years recognizing the danger of nuclear energy, to have reached the point. Think about it. 40 years ago, it would have been friggin' impossible to get the word out. But his lifetime of work, everybody knows. Everybody knows how horrifying and awful that nuclear shit really is, and how unnecessary it is. And it's just a friggin' weapons making bunch of bullshit that just destroys and kills. And through his I often think of men like him as activists or, Patrick Henry, revolutionaries. These guys go out, or even the earliest people in the UFO community, when they would see the sky ships, when they would see extraterrestrials and things, ships not of this world, but not being afraid to be called crazy, to go out and say, every one of those types, the revolutionary, the visionary, the artist, the activist, they go out, the philosopher, and they step outside and they go and they cross that river. They cross the Rubicon. They're over there and they're fighting, and they through their efforts, through their courage, and like Martin Luther King or Huey Long or Malcolm X or men pay the price, or Kevin Blanche. I mean, you get the piss beat out of you. You get censored. You get trolled. There's a tremendous amount of money and evil and all kinds of other resources that are thrown out of you. They even try and fucking kill you. All right? These are the warriors. These are the guys that go out where they call the soldier the warrior. Oh, courage. Here's your fucking courage. There's your fucking courage. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about guys that had ideas and that were putting, like Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ didn't pack a pistol. He went over and kicked the money changer's table over. But he was a man of peace. He was a man of ideals. That's why I love men of ideals, men of courage, the activist, the artist, the visionary, the revolutionary, those that want to see the world be a better place than what it was. And men like Ackerman, they go on the other side, and they're fighting in the wilderness for years and years and years alone, thinking that maybe they'll never win. Maybe there are too many forces arrayed against them. Maybe the enemy is too strong. Maybe they won't be able to stop them, but they fight nonetheless. And H. Thomas Ackerman, everybody knows nuclear energy is fucked. And so great a man, Now that everybody knows, once a problem is recognized, it can be addressed. All right. Now, I'm going to stop this live stream because it's an hour already, how time flies. And let me see if I can arrange a little something to have my friend join me. And maybe we'll come up with a little something different. It's been Hank. Catch you on the flip side. I think we still need to cover notes and other types of things for my generation to know when it comes to avoiding hyperinflationary environments and to be able to operate peacefully and intercommunally without having to, murder everything moving. It's been Hank. Catch you on the flip side.